Iran spent billions of dollars building underground cities designed to store missiles, massive bunker networks, hidden deep beneath the earth, designed to survive anything. But now, those same billions are literally burning, and that changes everything, because behind the explosions, there's something much bigger happening, something far more dangerous than missiles being destroyed. The Iranian president is now openly warning about something most people aren't paying enough attention to: a potential economic collapse. And when a government starts using those words in the middle of a war, it usually means one thing: things are worse than they look. At first, this might sound like just another consequence of conflict. Infrastructure gets hit, systems break, costs rise. But this is different, because Iran didn't just lose military assets, it may have lost the very foundation that was supposed to guarantee its survival. And here's where it gets interesting. Because inside Iran, there's growing tension, not just among the population, but at the very top. The Iranian president has reportedly warned commanders of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps about the risk of total economic breakdown. And more importantly, he's pushing back. He's arguing that the current strategy isn't working, that escalating the conflict could make things worse, that attacking neighboring Gulf countries is a mistake. Think about that for a second. In the middle of a war, you have the political leadership trying to slow things down, while the military leadership wants to keep pushing forward. That kind of division is never a good sign, and it gets even more revealing. Just days after the conflict began, the Iranian president publicly apologized to neighboring countries. He called them brothers, said Iran had no intention of attacking them, tried to calm the situation. Now ask yourself, why would a country at war suddenly apologize? Because he saw what was coming. He understood something that wasn't obvious yet, that the economy couldn't handle this, and he tried to buy time, but it didn't last, because shortly after that, he was forced to walk it back, hard. Figures within the regime pushed back immediately, making it clear Iran would not apologize, that it would continue striking targets, that survival came first. And just like that, any attempt to de-escalate was shut down. Now fast forward to today, and suddenly everything makes more sense, because if you look at the numbers, the situation becomes very clear. Back in 2024, around 25% of Iran's GDP came from oil exports. Another 5% came from other exports like steel and goods. Now imagine losing most of that almost overnight, because the Strait of Hormuz, one of the most important trade routes in the world, has effectively been disrupted. Oil isn't flowing like before. Tankers aren't moving. Even container ships are staying away. And when trade stops, economies suffocate. Add to that inflation already above 40%, zero economic growth, rising unemployment, especially among young people. And suddenly, you don't just have a war problem. You have a system under pressure from every direction. And here's something most people overlook. This didn't start with the war. Iran's economy was already struggling. Protests had already broken out months earlier. People were already frustrated. The current president came into power promising change, less government waste, better relations with the West, sanctions relief, economic recovery, but those efforts were blocked repeatedly and nothing changed. So when the war started, it didn't hit a stable system, it hit one that was already fragile, and that's why the impact is so severe. Since the conflict began, food prices have surged, internet access has been restricted, businesses are struggling to operate, supply chains are breaking down, hospitals are under pressure, daily life is becoming unstable, and that instability spreads fast. Because when prices rise and systems fail, people start asking questions, and when they don't get answers, they start creating their own. That's when uncertainty turns into something else: pressure. Now here's where things get even more complex, because while military actions grab attention, there's another battlefield forming inside the country: internal stability. And history shows something very clear. When external conflict and internal pressure happen at the same time, outcomes become unpredictable. Margins for error shrink. Every decision carries more weight. Every mistake becomes more costly. And one of the biggest challenges in that environment is information control. In recent weeks, Internet access has been heavily restricted. Officially, it's about security, but in reality, it has consequences. Businesses rely on connectivity, hospitals need data, payments depend on networks, communication depends on access. When that breaks, everything slows down. Small businesses struggle, supply chains lose efficiency, people lose access to basic services, and uncertainty grows. Because when people don't know what's happening, they start guessing, and those guesses can create even more instability. Now, from a strategic perspective, controlling information can help in the short term. It limits coordination, reduces the spread of narratives, gives authorities time, but long term, it erodes trust. And once trust starts to break, stability becomes much harder to maintain, especially during economic stress. At the same time, we're starting to see signs of adaptation, cash transactions increasing, local networks replacing broken supply chains, people finding alternative ways to survive. These are survival mechanisms, but they come at a cost: higher prices, lower efficiency, more pressure on the system. And here's something very important: the decision makers themselves are starting to change behavior. At the beginning of the conflict, actions were aggressive, direct, fast. Now, more cautious, more calculated, small adjustments, partial reversals, allowing limited shipping activity again, reducing pressure in certain areas. That tells you something. Priorities are shifting. It's no longer just about external objectives, it's about maintaining internal balance, because you cannot sustain external operations if your internal systems are breaking. And this leads to the key point: the outcome of this situation won't be decided by a single event. It will be the result of multiple forces interacting at the same time: military actions, economic conditions, public response, strategic decisions, all moving together, all influencing each other. And if we look at past conflicts, there's a pattern. Initial escalation, followed by adjustment, then a phase where long term strategies start to take shape. And that's where we are now. Not at the end, not at resolution, but at a turning point, where decisions become more calculated and consequences become heavier. Because as pressure builds, every move matters more. And this doesn't just affect Iran. The regional impact is already spreading. Countries not directly involved are still feeling it, through trade, through energy markets, through security concerns, which adds another layer of complexity. Now decisions are not just internal, they are also about perception, relationships, reactions, and that's where diplomacy, even limited diplomacy, starts to play a role, not necessarily to end the conflict, but to manage it, contain it, prevent it from escalating further. Whether that works or not is another question, but the fact that these efforts exist tells you something important. This is no longer just a conflict, it's a system under pressure. And systems under pressure don't always break where you expect. Sometimes they adapt, sometimes they shift, sometimes they collapse. And that's what makes this moment so critical, because what happens next won't just depend on strength or strategy or resources. It will depend on who adapts faster, who manages pressure better, and who can maintain stability while everything else is changing. And in situations like this, that's usually what decides everything.